of Try This at Home. I'm Cliff Bumgardner.
I am still Harrison Stewart.
Our myths this week are Ming Dynasty Astronaut, Free Energy, and Killer Ceiling Fan. This episode originally aired on November 24th, 2004, and it was produced, as we've come to know, that means directed, by Andrew Farrell, friend of the show, friend of once the show. Again. And this week, there was no one credited as a post-producer, which is what we've come to believe means writer. So I wonder if I would doubt he would do both. That seems like a lot. But there was no credited post-producer or writer on this episode. So
interesting.
Don't quite know what happened there.
Don't try this at home, Cliff. I really cannot be clear enough about that this week.
Yes.
Do not, under any circumstances, the podcast Try This at Home.
I considered clipping some of the many times that they say that and cutting out the don't and just be like, look, it's an endorsement from Jamie saying try this at home.
That would be great. Although pretty antithetical, I think, to the point of why they kept repeating it. I counted 6 by the end of this. That's a record. That has got to be a record. I think usually we get 1.
Yeah.
Sometimes we get 2. I've never, ever counted more than 1. Seriously, guys, we cannot be more serious right now. Do not try this at home.
Which is it's kind of funny considering there's really only one myth in here I would consider practical to, or involves a household thing that you might do. The rest is like,
the rockets on the Chinese chair.
We all have
I mean, everybody's got a Ming Dynasty chair in their house. Everybody makes rockets out of bamboo. Don't try it at home,
but don't do it at home, though.
But don't do it at home.
No.
Don't. Nary the twain shall meet.
They really should have.
Mythbusters.
They should have used the rocket chair to lift them into the ceiling fan. Just brought those myths together. It would have been the most practical at-home application of myth busting.
Now we're cooking. Now we're cooking. And the engine runs on the propane pellet.
Oh, there we go. There we go. That would bring...
It's a super death machine.
That would bring all 3 of these myths together. That would be perfect. I love that. I'm going to throw this to you to start out with. How did you feel overall, before we get into the myths, how did you feel about this episode on the whole? Because I was left with certain feelings, and I'm curious, before I say anything, I want to see if any of them came up for you.
Well, there were several things that I liked a lot about this episode. I really enjoyed... I'm always going to be a fan of the Acme nonsense.
Oh, yeah.
Anytime something goes way faster than it's supposed to, that gets me. It just does. And then also, I the ceiling fan one was very, very interesting to me because I knew that they wouldn't focus very long on just like, can it decapitate you by jumping on the bed? Cliff, I'm a dumb kid. You'll notice I didn't say was. Still am. I've hit my head on the ceiling fan a lot.
Oh, me too.
I mean, like...
Same.
At a certain point, I stopped counting. So, I mean, it's been more than probably 3 times.
Oh, yeah, I've done it as an adult. Certainly.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
No question.
And I mean, it's not good. I don't love it. But, like, decapitation, no. So I was really looking forward to that one to see... okay, how are they going to push this to make it something? I would say the one downside for me was the middle myth there. The free energy was, I don't know, it felt very, why are you making me do this?
Yeah. Yes.
Like just we've got to do this to show that it's not possible, but I wonder how that one came about, because I mean, it seemed like something that the rest of the team was not super duper interested in, apart from being like, there, we did it. Will you leave us alone now? So I'm super curious what's going on behind the scenes that like caused that kind of tension, shall we say.
So I am so glad that you went first because it really it reinforces the thought that I had, which my note
Okay.
was something was going on during that episode, during that the
Mm.
filming of that myth.
Mhm.
Something, whether it was a problem with what they were
Mhm.
trying to test, whether it was forced on them, I don't
Mhm.
know. My overall note for this episode, the first thing I wrote down was, wow, this is a classic. This is another one of
Mhm.
those I remember from being on the couch when I'm sick as a kid. You know, that it is like
Same.
immediately that was what I remembered. And then my next note was, this feels very much like an early episode of the show in some good ways
Mm.
and some bad. In the good ways, we get a lot of Jado rocket car kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
we get to see it again, and we get to see kind of how they approach that now, which is much better and much cleaner, and the methodology is better, and it was more understandable. All of that was awesome. It was almost like a little bit of a revisit back to Jado rocket car. But on the other hand, especially in that middle myth, stuff happened for no reason. People got introduced and then we didn't see them again until we suddenly did, and they didn't have really
Mhm.
any reason to be there. They
Mhm.
didn't explain much at all about how things do or don't work or why they're testing what they're testing. That myth felt, we have not seen a lot in this season as the show has gotten better. We have had a real um, evolution in the show, and we have not seen a lot of that messiness, and it just felt messy to me. It felt
Mm.
all over the place, and it was really strange. I don't know what happened there, but I feel like
But
something was going on.
I do too. And but part of, I should note that part of the reason why it was so noticeable this time around is because it was sandwiched in between two myths that had none of that.
Yeah,
That I mean, especially with the ceiling fan, everybody seemed to be having the time of their life. Everybody
totally.
was just way on board, loving it, cracking up, having, and that's infectious. I like it when it is so widespread that even Jamie is like, like
Yeah. Yeah.
that's delightful to me. That's delightful. So yeah, I mean, it was just that this one, it just stuck out, and it stuck out, I think, because the ones around it were particularly strong and memorable.
Totally. I definitely agree. It's very interesting to see that kind of divergence here at this point in the show. And as we dive into it, I have some other thoughts as to why it may feel the way that it does.
Oh boy.
Myth 1, Ming Dynasty Astronaut. So this is the story of a 15th century Chinese astrologer who tried to launch himself into space using 47 rockets strapped to his throne. And
Oddly specific, but keep going.
very specific, as the claim goes, immediately after the rockets went off, 47 rockets lit by 47 people with 47 fuses, the astrologer disappeared, and many people believed that he did, in fact, make it to space. So
There
could
he goes.
that happen with the ancient technology specifically, is the question here. Had you ever heard of this story before?
No, never.
I had not either, and which surprised me to look it up and find that this is a known story.
Like
Apparently,
documented?
it is. There is debate over whether or not it is true, but it is
Well, sure.
certainly a legend that has gone around and gotten a lot of mileage. It was supposed to be a 15th century Chinese astrologer named Wan Hu, who was in the royal court and was attempting to, prove some aspect of what he was studying, and he did this. And even though it's pretty debated, some have regarded it as like the first attempt at rocket-powered spaceflight, and obviously they don't believe that he made it to space, but that it was actually the first attempt, so much so that NASA named a crater on the moon after him.
What?
So NASA has actually acknowledged this story. This story has that many legs.
It's well known enough.
Yeah.
Within, okay. All right. Well,
That really surprised me.
it did me too, just because I do wonder, obviously. First question I would have would be, at what point does the myth appear?
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Like, okay, 15th century, when does that appear in the text? I would be interested to know that. But also, I mean, we've talked about this a lot, kernel of truth. Like, I do wonder what the thing in there, the thing could just be gunpowder, right? That could just be the kernel of truth from which this whole ridiculous thing sprung. It's just gunpowder was discovered. Bada bing, bada boom. Shoot you into space. Sure.
I mean, and where this goes, not to get completely far ahead of us, but where this goes, they even say at one point, like, their results do match the story, that this happens and everything disappears. You know what I mean? I mean, this could have been a horrible accident that.
Oh, that's so funny.
Isn't that weird to think about?
That's so funny to imagine that, like, no, he was just vaporized, and like, he's in space.
He's in space. He did.
He's with the gods now. He's up there in the ether, friend. You'll never see him again.
Ignore those those scorch marks on the ground. He's definitely in space.
What's this blood? No, that's holy rocket fuel. Duh.
That's what science looks like. That's just the leftovers of science happening.
So were you getting some the remains of science?
The remains of sometimes science looks like blood.
Sometimes science leaves you a little gift.
They invented blood science at the same time they invented rocketry. It all came together.
It all at the same glorious moment. And glorious.
Yes.
Were you getting some big thank you. You know what, Cliff? I thank you for humoring me. I know that wasn't a good joke. You gave it to me.
No, I actually liked it. I appreciated it quite a bit.
Okay.
I did.
Okay.
I did.
Well, this is the point when the listenership is going to but I'll get it back with this. I couldn't stop thinking about Ancient Aliens this whole episode. Or mainly during this part.
Yeah,
but
that didn't occur to me, but that's an interesting thought.
Well, so this would probably predate Ancient Aliens by several years, but I do so. I don't know if I remember this story in particular, but I do love, there are lots of different ones that they pointed to where they're like, this ancient Mayan thing looks kind of like a rocket ship to us. Coincidence? Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, 100%.
People have the same ideas. I don't know. Here.
Crazy, I know. I did really, 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 really want this to work.
I know. Yeah, me too.
I can't describe how much I wanted this to work.
Yeah.
It's in the same way that you watch Iron Man 1 and he's got the booster boots. And then he just adds the hand things. It's like, yeah, I can fly now. I want that to be true.
Yeah.
Of course, I know it's not. But, like, come on. It's close. It looks like something that might be true. And this had a similar vibe where it's like, I don't know about going straight up into the air, but I don't know. Some liftoff, some hovering or some such. I'd take it.
Well, and that's where a lot of the, like I was saying before, the JATO rocket car aspect came in, because when they start to talk about this, you can immediately picture, oh, I want this to work, and I can imagine what it's going to look like, and it's going to look so cool. And you know, because of where we're at in the show, that one way or another, you're going to see some rockets go off on a chair. So it's like it immediately sets the tone and kind of baits the hook with, oh man, I gotta see where this is going. It's a great question for a Mythbusters episode, or a great thing to experiment with.
Yeah.
Should
this is a bit of an aside.
Yeah.
Before we get into that, what's your cutoff for the term ancient? They kept referring to this specifically as like an ancient myth. And then when they were like 1500 AD, I was like, ooh, I don't know. That doesn't feel ancient to me. I feel like late antiquity is like the cutoff.
So I just did a Google, and technically, according to Google, ancient history covers all continents inhabited by humans in the period of 3000 BC to AD 500.
There it is.
So
I was gonna peg it as the fall of the Western Roman Empire.
Basically,
like that's kind of where I imagine. And again, that's not based on any sort of like historical analysis. That's just me being like, when they were saying ancient,
Right.
I was thinking something more along the lines of do you remember when they found like that ancient Japanese man in like Oregon?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
yeah.
they're like, whoa, what is this? Like this ancient, that's what I was,
That's ancient.
something that's like so far back that it's almost like there's the possibility that some form of technology existed and then was lost to time.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was picturing. And then they're like, no, 1500s. I'm like, yeah, old is what I would consider. That's old.
Can we call it? That's the super old period. Not quite the ancient.
Yeah.
That's just super old.
That's just super old, my guy. Give it the terminology. Come on.
Yeah, that's it. It didn't occur to me, but you're right. They kind of go to that well a lot throughout the episode, and it's actually not as ancient as you'd probably think.
It's just, I mean, like, I can think of other technology that existed at the time that, like, okay, step back. Any rocket into space is going to be ridiculous before the 1960s, right? That obviously. Totally. But or late 50s, the thing, this is just not this is not like wildly outside the realm of possibility.
Yeah.
Like I changed my opinion pretty drastically when they were like 1500s. I was like, you could launch a guy somewhere. I don't know about space, but 1500s, we got launching-esque technology at this point. I feel like
in the least, we can send him down the road. I don't know about space.
We can send him down the road.
Yeah.
He will probably be dragging his face along the road the whole way, but we could do it. It's a punishment. It's not.
While we're on the topic of how things age.
Mm-hmm. Oh my.
I feel like there is like an overall note we need to talk about with this episode. Mm-hmm. And I will admit, when we first teed this episode up last week, when I saw this on our list and said, oh, it's the next episode, I immediately had a slight fear of, oh my God, what kind of stereotypes, terminology, and things are we going to see in this episode? And I think it's worth just saying there's a lot in this episode that we would not do now and that has not aged that great. And I hate to excuse anything, but I do want to say it's not as bad as I feared it could be.
Cliff, Spike TV was on at this point. So like
right.
The gloves are off.
South Park had been on for a while at this point.
Yup. So like as far as what and I mean, like you were saying, it's not an excuse. It's just that versus my expectations.
Totally.
Knowing when this dropped, knowing a lot of the things, because there were things that I was expecting them to do that they never did.
Yeah.
One of them is I'm sure you're familiar with the East Asian Riff. It's the bar that every Westerner knows. It is not East Asian in any way, shape, or form. We invented it. It was included in like racist cartoons in the 30s and stuff like that. Doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Right?
When you go to a stock music website and type in Asian music, that's what comes up.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm not even going to like hum it because you know the one I'm talking about.
Totally.
Right? Like it is that ubiquitous. Did not do that. There was one moment where there was an accent, but I don't think it was I think it was just like, because again, if I remove any context, it's just like, maybe I'm looking for it here, but Adam just does funny voices, and that certainly is not, like, there was no swapping of syllables. No. There was no like swapping of R's and L's or anything like that.
It was a funny voice we've heard from him before, too. He often goes, it's almost like an Eastern European thing that he lapses into, and I can like see the face he makes when he does it. And I don't think his face was on camera for that shot in this episode, so you just hear an accent and go, oh boy. But you're right, I don't think it actually was.
I'm sure that they would probably second guess putting Buster in the garb.
Yeah.
I think that was probably the closest to like, but you know, I still think that there was a lot more that I was expecting
And
that it didn't quite get to, that I was like, you know what? Not perfect. Notes, of course,
yeah.
but you know,
Yeah. And to
we
the
could have
credit
done a lot worse.
to the credit of the show as well, I feel like they actually spent a good amount of time. This is partly why I wanted to talk about the, you know, the potentially real story behind this, is because I do feel like they spent a good amount of time kind of as we've seen in the past with Jamie in other episodes, sort of marveling at the ingenuity of this, right? Like they were very respectful to the notion of, you know, what this person would have been capable of back then to even attempt something like this, even if they attempted this and it went horribly wrong. Like they really did seem to acknowledge that, and they didn't, there was no jokey malice or anything like that, and that's to their credit. They took it seriously for what it was, and I think that's what really helped a lot of that.
I agree. I completely agree, because I mean, at the end of the day, they were testing it as like a reasonable, like, let's give this a fighting chance.
Yeah.
Down to, and I mean, I got a lot of tree cannon vibes from this one as well.
Oh, yeah.
Down to them like recreating the chair, the throne. So they created 2 thrones.
They had to make 2
Right.
thrones because they're going to do one with the, you know, quote unquote ancient gunpowder, and the other
Right.
with modern rocketry.
And the old school rockets, very cleverly designed using bamboo.
And twine. That was really cool.
Twine.
Because if you think of bamboo, it's just
some
blow
kind
up.
of pitch. It looked like
it would just blow apart. But it was like the wrapping it in twine actually makes a lot of sense. It looked legit. Like
Yes.
it looked really cool, and immediately made it feel more plausible when you saw what they were, and when they started testing them, and they didn't get a lot of force, but it did work.
It reminded me a lot of like the professor's inventions on Gilligan's Isle.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
like that was, it just looked very like jerry rigged, and like.
Did you notice that when they went to test the little rockets, they were trying to test their different gunpowder formulations to see if they could make a certain concoction with enough force or whatever, they did it outside with blast shields and safety zones. Our guys are learning.
They're learning.
For once, they didn't do it inside of M5.
Jamie even went and checked to see if traffic was coming.
I know. I was so happy to see that.
We're growing.
We're growing,
We're
guys.
learning.
It really cracked me up that it's taken this long for them to go, hey, maybe we don't do the fire indoors.
Maybe just this once.
Maybe just this once. We take the fire outside. That's
just
where
take it
rockets
out.
live. They live outside. Let's do it outside.
They live outside. It's their natural environment. Let them be. I really liked, there was, in what is becoming a tradition of fairly mean, funny, but mean editing.
Yes.
When they were, you know, the moment I'm talking about, when they're making the chair, and they paint it like pink at first, and then red, and then he's adding leaf
Gold leaf. Yeah.
Gold leaf, thank you. And it doesn't go well. And I think it's Carrie says, "Oh, Adam, it's perfect." But they choose a shot showing just how imperfect it is, like a close up on it as she's saying it's perfect. So it's very like, it's kind of infantilizing, you know? It's like, "Oh, Adam, oh,
You
that's
did
such
it,
a
buddy."
good chair. We're gonna put that chair on the fridge right now. That way everyone can see it." Oh,
and it's
work, buddy.
after Carrie already made those little Adam and Jamie tiles to stick on
Which
the
are
chair.
dope, by the way.
It's so good. We see this several times in the episode with Carrie kind of doing some of the set design of the things that they're testing, and that has become her character on this show. We've talked about the roles that each person has, and I thought about that in this episode, that Carrie is the one who's adding some style, some set dressing, kind of helping create more of that world of Mythbusters. Like we've talked about the visual storytelling of Mythbusters, that like
Yeah.
we could do this in a straight ahead way, but we're making TV. Why don't we bring some style and some comedy and some panache to it? And that is like her expertise, is elevating it, in that way. And it was really great to see that throughout this one. It was so funny to me.
I even thought I this was the first time that I thought like, I don't know that the chairs need to look that good.
Yeah, they're not going to be here very long.
I mean, but it's hard to. It was more just that it seemed like everybody stopped what they were doing in this episode just to work on like the frills of this chair.
Yes,
in a really funny way.
They make a whole sequence out of that, out of just building these chairs. I did love.
Hard to argue with results.
Well, exactly. I loved that they went back to the Mojave where they did the JATO rocket car, and even got the JATO rocket guys out to help them, the people who'd help them put the rockets on. And I just had a thought.
What is it? Friends of Aerial Rocketry?
Yeah, something like that.
Which they never say. I was thinking the acronym is FAR. That's so cute. Why didn't they never say it? Yeah.
They need a T. They need something. We need to add a T onto the end of their name.
Friends of Aerial Rocketry.
Technicians.
There
we go.
Welcome to Fart.
Welcome to Fart. We need to bring out the fart.
Top secret.
We need some more lift.
You don't have fart clearance.
We need some more lift to bring out the fart.
You're going in a more clever direction. I just like saying fart over and over.
Yeah, I'm going a more clever direction. I'm the one that said we need to add a T. I made the fart joke to begin with. I'm already a 12-year-old. It's fine.
Well, at least you know.
I did have
You're in good company.
I did have the thought when they went out to the Mojave, they show a little montage from Rocket Car, and they talk about, they talk about that myth and how these guys came and helped them and whatever. And it was crazy to see how far they've come. Like, it was actually really nice. I know for us, it's only been like a year since we watched that, which is crazy in and of itself. But like, to see in just this short time on the show, now there's like a sea of people out there and all of this setup, and it looks so much better and it sounds better and it feels better. Like it was a really cool little flashback to get to see in the episode.
See, but Cliff, I was thinking about this as I was watching this episode. We're not that much further away in time right now from when we watched the first one as they were from when it was filmed versus when it was released.
That's like,
I mean,
that's a good
there's
point.
If we're factoring in, so if we're releasing these every week and they were releasing them every week, maybe factor in 6 months off.
Yeah.
JATO Rocket Car was like last year at this point to them.
Well,
like maybe 2 years ago, but like not that far.
I'm now forgetting our own show, but I think when Adam was on, didn't he say that the pilots were shot like summer of 2002?
I believe he did. Actually.
And so this episode aired at the end of 2004. It was probably being shot summer of 2003. So
that's a lot to learn in just 2 years.
Yeah. I mean, well, less than. You're right. It would have been about a year since they did JATO Rocket Car. That is crazy to think about.
Yeah.
I mean, good on them.
Yeah, but it is still wild how, and I love my favorite part, honestly, about doing the show, besides giving you crap, of course.
And making James Bond references.
Naturally, it goes without saying. Is just like talking to people and kind of figuring out which voices were introduced into the mix that like moved it into a certain direction to where it is. Well, I mean, we have commented borderline incessantly on how like, it's fine. It's the show that we remember. That happened so early. Like, I seriously cannot stress that enough. That is very early on in the development. It's been so cool talking to the people and being like, what was it that you tried to bring to it? And then they'll say it, and then you can actually see it.
Yeah.
Like, in watching the episodes. That's been so fruitful and cool for me to be able to watch the show now with that context.
Well, and we got one of those kind of another step in that, another one of those cha-ching achievement unlocked moments in this episode. They get Buster in the chair. They're about to actually do the first test. And Adam says,
I'm staring at a Chinese dressed crash test dummy on a throne strapped to 70 pounds of gunpowder. I just had another one of those Mythbusters moments.
the Mythbusters moments, these will become known
Ding, 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 ding.
as the what the hell are we doing moments. That's what it becomes known as in the course of the show. But this is the first one, at least that has been captured. The way he said it made me think that he's made that joke before and it just didn't make it into the
did.
edit. But in
Yeah.
terms of in our rewatch of the show, this is the first one that we've hit. Another cool achievement along the way.
There we are. Yeah, we finally found it.
Because it is that is something that I have thought about so much over the years after watching Mythbusters, is when you find yourself in those moments where you kind of get stuck outside of your head for a second and are like, how is this happening? Like, what is actually going on?
How is this a show?
They encapsulated that so well on Mythbusters that's one of my favorite running gags. And one of the only ones that we had not hit yet. I think there's only a couple more. We hit to your point, we hit a lot of these really fast. Am I missing an eyebrow? Reject your reality. Now we've got the Mythbusters moments. There's only a couple more that I can think of that we haven't seen. So it's all coming together.
And again, so much earlier in the franchise than like I realized.
Yeah. So we mention all throughout our seasons, we always do end of year recaps, and one of our categories is best explosion. And I think we may have a nominee right now.
So
This first test with the quote unquote ancient gunpowder that they make, which was improved by their rocket team, that's worth mentioning. I mean, it's just a massive explosion. And when they show the high speed, this is what we were talking about earlier. Buster legitimately disappears. He's there, fire takes over the frame, and when the fire goes down, he's gone. It's awesome.
Well, what you mean is torso, head, and a single leg are gone. Both arms and one leg are still strapped to the chair and smoking. Like it looks like Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru, like from Star Wars. It's just
It honestly
he's
looked
gone.
his like plastic flesh, whatever coating is on him, honestly looked like a marshmallow you had just chucked into a fire. It was that kind of like gnarled black. Oh my God.
Yeah.
This is the new top wrecking of Buster, because
This is
not only
absolutely.
did it burn him up, it blasted him to bits all at the same time. We've seen him burned, we've seen him dropped, we've seen him blown up. This was like all three at the same time. Awesome.
I don't think we've seen him catch fire like this.
Not like this.
Like a sustained burn.
I
Where
wonder,
they were like, he's molten, we cannot touch him.
we don't, well, obviously we haven't watched ahead, so I don't know, but I wonder how far into the show it is before they have to actually remake him. We've seen them put him back together and make joints, but there's at a certain point where they make a new Buster because he has been so destroyed and so burned. I cannot imagine we're far from that at this point.
Oh, I think it's already happened.
No, because he looks different.
No?
At a certain point, it looks more like, for those who watch our clips on Instagram and YouTube, he looks more like my my little Buster that sits on my microphone while we record. He gets this weird pink. They make him to where that he can be put back together more easily.
Okay.
And they keep the same head, but the body is completely different and is made from the ground up. So that is a thing that I know happens at a certain point on the show.
Well, it's got to be close after this because, I mean, like when they put him back together for round 2, he looked terrible.
He is a mess.
I mean, like he looks like Two-Face. Like half of his, I mean, it's just completely charred.
Oh my God. Yeah. The new top explosion, new top Buster destruction. Just unbelievable. And a great high speed shot.
And then not only that, but round 2
It's so funny.
was funny for totally different reasons.
Yes.
I mean,
He just turfs straight into the ground. He's just up, boom.
It goes up for maybe 2 feet, and then one side tilts, and it rams him into the ground and then just drags him across
his
the desert.
face across the desert floor. And it's so insane. I love the shot. Like Adam and Christine are in like this little hut, like this little blast hut, watching everything going on. And it's so insane. They cut back to them and Christine ducks because all they see is crap flying everywhere. And the whole rig is going side. It's a complete mess and it's awesome.
I would have ducked too, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
But no, I took this moment back 4 or 5 times. I was just like, again, please, wonderful.
It's a great shot.
Wonderful.
It's so funny.
I loved it.
Thank
honestly.
goodness that high speed had already progressed to this point. Like we're already better than the initial high speed cameras that they had, and they could capture this as well as they did because it is so funny and so awesome.
The only regret I have is that it wasn't angled wide enough to where you could see him, like he quickly flies out of frame.
Yeah.
Here, and you can sort of see the edge hitting the ground. But I really, you know, similar to the glider one, the wood glider.
Yeah.
There's something so good about just seeing something like plant.
Yes.
You know, just so firmly,
blam.
just bop. Just like hit the ground harder than you think gravity alone should make it do. That's very fun. Very funny.
They end up making the point that, you know, even with these modern rockets, like, it's funny. I think we all kind of have a oversimplified image in our heads from cartoons of like, you strap rocket, it mean go up. But that's not how it works. You need stabilizing systems and you need all sorts of things to actually make that happen. And so even with the modern rockets, they got like you said, like 2 feet of lift. There was no way he was actually going to get into space, especially.
Right.
And they didn't really focus on this in the episode, but I was glad they brought it up at the end. The original myth included that thing about lighting all 47 fuses at once and like all this craziness. It's just impossible. There's just no way. Even if the technology had been there, there's no way. But I did think it was fascinating that they make that point that like, well, he did disappear. So maybe there is a kernel of truth in that overall.
He was never heard from again. That part could be true.
That part is true. I would bank on that. But the myth that he could get to space was busted.
80 pounds of gunpowder, 22 idiots, 1 crash test dummy. Priceless.
Myth 2, free energy. So this is one of those kind of multitude of myths within a single myth, all based around the idea of can you create so-called free energy? These are various devices and methods and techniques to create energy. Ironically, most of the devices you have to buy, which kind of defeats the purpose of free energy. But you're not paying for the ongoing energy. They are somehow self-generating continual motion, that kind of thing. And they're going to test multiple different, I believe 4 different methods of attaining free energy. And my thought on this one, we talked about in the opening about how it was kind of messy. One of the things that I was missing, to go back to the theme of this feels like an early episode, I would have loved Heather Joseph Witham in this myth.
Oh, God,
it was missing that touch of like, here's why this is so interesting to people. Because all of the methods were ridiculous. Like, the methods were not what was interesting here. To me, it was more about the ideas and the psychology around it, which they don't go into at all.
I'm so glad that you said this, because I think this is the first time in the entirety of the show that I have actually known more about what they're talking about than they end up stating in the show.
Oh, interesting.
Because,
You've
like,
got the research hole this week.
Weirdly, if it's incredibly esoteric and specific, yeah. But so like this is huge in the prepping community.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
So like that goes along with so much, right? That goes hand in hand with, because you know, there's the, and also off, like, I don't want to, it's not just preppers, right? I mean, also it's a ton of people that just want to go off grid for any number of reasons, some of them perfectly legitimate, you know, it's not only the end of the world, but I did find I would have loved to have Heather Joseph Witham come in and say like, well, this really started becoming a thing around this time period when this dude, and then it caught fire with this news story, and that's how it spread online. There was just a prime opportunity for that, and it also could have almost salvaged this one.
Yeah.
You know, made it a little more interesting. Made me understand why so many people even think this is possible. I can understand why they want it, but why do they think that they can do it? You know,
I would have loved either that aspect, ideally both, but either that aspect of the culture behind it and sort of that, pop size sort of element to it, or a deeper dive into the science. Because we'll get there. At one point, they actually mention a kind of scientific theory, very debunked, but a scientific theory that I looked up, and it's really interesting. But they don't go in. They mention it at the very end, and they never go into it. And with
is it
each
over
of these,
unity?
Over unity, yeah.
Yeah, that's what. Yes, I was the same. I was like, that's fascinating. I want to know about that.
But they don't go into it. This is the first time I've never done this in the history of this podcast. But they mentioned the doctor who was from MIT who was going to be with them throughout the show. I didn't even write down his name because he wasn't there enough for it to matter. He just comes in. They don't explain why he's there. They don't really interview him about the science or the myth or anything. He's just like running tests at a computer, not really explaining anything. I don't even think his name is ever seen on screen. They just say it a couple of times. It was so weird how top level this whole myth was. It's just not the show that we've been seeing all season.
No, because they seemed to bring him in because Adam was either overwhelmed or like it wasn't working what he was trying to do. So
that
just
was
like,
later.
Yeah, we brought in a guy to like build it.
Well, that's later with the temperature wheel thing, but even on the very first one, they're like, along with the help of Dr. Who's a what's, from MIT, they're going to do these myths. And he's just kind of there, but
they mentioned that he was in another episode, but like they took for granted. They're like, this guy. We don't got no introductions necessary. And it's like, he's been in one other episode.
We kind of like semi-professionally watched the show, and I don't remember it.
Okay, well, that's fair. Semi-professionally.
It was just so strange the way.
But that's assuming that we're good at our jobs.
This is true. Which that's a big stretch.
Bold claim.
There's a myth worth testing.
Busted.
But like the other thing about this reminded me a lot of the microchips in your blood myth from last season, where they're
like, why are you bothering us?
Yeah, where they don't take, obviously you don't have to take the science seriously. You can point out the fact that the science doesn't make any sense, but for the concept of the show, for the conceit of the show, I feel like they have to take things a certain level of serious for the show to work. Yeah. And they don't do that at all with this, where every single thing is just like, this isn't going to work. So, big surprise, it didn't work. And it makes it very weird as a viewer to be pulled through that. In the least, I would have loved, like, the temperature wheel is the closest they get to Adam being like, I'm excited about this. I think this could potentially work. Like, we'll talk about it. And on the end, it actually does do something, even though it's not nearly, practical for what they're talking about. But like,
right.
There was such it's like they kind of gave up on, this is ridiculous from the beginning. And it made the whole, like you said, it made the whole thing just like, why are we doing this then?
See, and that's almost, to me, a more interesting myth would have been like, can you build a functioning battery with household items?
Yeah.
Like that's what the energy wheel made me think of. And then, because then, the test for success is just, can it produce any energy at all?
Right.
And that's interesting.
That's such a good idea. It could have been another Adam and Jamie competition. It's like tailor-made for that.
Ooh.
To see them each go to bat with their own design for like I guess it's not a perpetual motion machine, but like sort of like a free energy machine.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just because like that would have, the myth felt like the preamble to an actual myth.
Yeah,
I guess that was my problem with it. Is just that like by the time they got to Busted, I was like, I feel like you gave me half a story.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I've just got more questions. Well, things that seemed to kind of work. Don't you want to kind of push that? Try to get it to work?
I'll briefly run down the devices that they use, and I think even just the way I've written them down will tell you something about how this myth was. Because the first one is supposed to be a G-strain amplifier that can pull energy from the curvature of
Like
space.
G-string amplifier.
Hey! They even, at one point,
Cut
they
it
say...
if you want. I don't care.
At one point, they just say, oh, this is actually a ring oscillator. And then they don't explain what a ring oscillator is, and they move on. And no, I didn't look it up.
I didn't either.
It was like, I don't care. The temperature wheel, which was the most interesting one to me, the propane tanks on a wheel, supposed to be use thermal energy essentially and it does work that you can actually make a wheel in this way, but it moves so slowly that there's no practical purpose for it. And then the next one I wrote down,
It moves slowly even in the sped up footage.
Yeah.
Like they do it at like 4 times speed and it's still just inching along.
Then the next one I wrote down, the title I have is "Box Off the Internet?" ? They don't explain what that one is. It's just supposed to use radio waves, and they get enough energy out of it to power a wristwatch.
Just the screen.
Just the screen, completely impractical. And the last one, something they called I think it was Bedini motor. I don't know how to spell that, but I tried to write it down as I went, which is another one that kind of sort of seems understandable when you look at it, that it's a battery that drives a motor that spins a wheel that feeds energy back to the motor. So there's the idea of perpetual energy because the energy is creating something which is then repowering the battery.
Well, and I think what you've just said might unlock where all the kind of sore feelings are coming from in this myth. What you just said is insanely anti-scientific. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like it's one of those that you're just like, piss off.
So
that's
this
ridiculous.
is where they introduce a concept that I would love for them, to your point, if they had ended this segment, if they had done this in a shorter form, and they had ended this segment of the myth with a conversation about this concept of over unity, and then done an experiment to show why that is bull, or to put it into use in some way, build their own devices, whatever. Like you were saying, if there had been another half on board, but they just come to it and they mention over unity, ridiculous, right? Myth over. Over unity is this crazy idea. The definition that I found is it refers to a device or system that purportedly produces more energy output than energy input. The problem with this is it violates the laws of thermodynamics.
Pretty big one.
Yeah, it's a
pretty fundamental problem to have with something.
Pretty fundamental problem is that the basic laws of our universe, it won't work.
Whoops.
But that's the actual thing at play here, is this notion of, can you create more energy than you are putting into something and therefore create free energy? But they don't introduce that until this one line at the very end that we're all left to Google 20 years later.
Yeah.
Just a very...
Now, granted, it's a cool Google hole. But,
very cool. But and it makes for great conversation, but like, I would have loved to have seen that on the show. This is the first, I think this is the first real miss for me this season. I can't think of another myth that was like a real swing and a miss like this for me.
I think that might be true. Although I still will give it some credit just for introducing me to the concept of over unity. Just because I find it fascinating. It's bunk. It's nonsense. But it's fun nonsense, you know? It's the perfect level of nonsense where I'm like, I can see why people would be fascinated with it. You know, kind of like alchemy, where people are just so convinced that, no, but if I just do it just right, I swear I can get the equation to make gold. You know
what I just realized as you were saying that? What we're asking for, the myth we're asking for, was the hovercrafts. That's exactly what they did. They buy a thing on the internet that's supposed to, or out of a catalog, whatever. It's supposed to be this magical plan for something. They do it and go, bah, and then they make something out of it. That's exactly what this could have been.
Yeah. And now, granted, I mean, I guess it was last. I think they're trying to spread the competitions out.
We did get a bunch really close together for a while, so that's probably a good call.
So I think that's probably it. And then also I think it just comes down to the simple fact of the other two myths were way more interesting.
Yeah. And this one was also, we don't on the show anymore. We don't kind of jump around the way that the Mythbusters does. We're going a myth at a time. This one was really strung out throughout the show. I mean, they'd come back for part of the propane tank one and then go away and then come back to the propane tank. And then it was interesting. That's why I say I feel like they just had something about this myth that they were dealing with or trying to get something out of it because of the time that they put into it. I don't know. It was very weirdly handled overall, but it was unsurprisingly busted across the board.
Busted.
Yeah.
He's about to find out the hard way that Jamie's warehouse is miswired. Now, there's no question that Adam's a bright spark,
That might have been, I don't know, a bad noise.
but he's no electrician.
I'm releasing the mysterious blue smoke here. The problem is once you release the mysterious blue smoke, electronics don't work anymore.
Myth 3, killer ceiling fan. Can your ceiling fan kill you? Now, this is an interesting one. Yeah, no, as previously discussed, we've both done this as adults, and no. But interesting thing to this is that up at the top, they introduced two ways in which this can happen. They even call it two myths, but I don't really think that's right. I think it's just two different methods or two different aspects of the myth to test. One is someone jumping into the fan neck first. It was supposed to be a lover leaping into bed and
Boy knows that's how I leap. You
right?
got to get some air under you.
Yeah, apparently Michael Jordan was leaping into bed. Who is this supposed to be? But actually going neck
I pile
first.
drive my wife. I don't. Whoops.
Leave that one in for Catherine. It's a good thing our wives don't listen to the show. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, seriously.
I have asked my wife if she would listen to the show, and her response was, "I've heard you guys." she lives with
harsh critic. Okay.
she lives with this, so it's
And that's enough.
That's enough.
That's enough for anyone.
And then the other method was actually, they talked about it being kids jumping on a bed, which is a bit dark. But someone jumping up into the fan and actually hitting the top of their head. So two kind of ways you could get hit. The only thing that's a little bit weird in this myth to me, because I love this one. I love it. It's hilarious. All the ways they mess with Carrie. It's great. Whole thing's great. The only thing that was a little bit weird is they end up hinging the thing on, well, it's not decapitation, therefore myth busted. The jumping up into the fan thing was never supposed to be decapitation. It was you're getting hit at the top of the head, which is not decapitation.
Getting scalped.
Yeah. So they kind of have some weird definitions of what is or isn't busted in this one. But that's like my overly critical note for this. Otherwise, this one was super awesome.
This one was very cool because it looked great.
Yeah.
Like even when it wasn't working. So basically they tried it with just a standard ceiling fan that you can get anywhere. And then they got like an industrial ceiling fan.
Yeah. A metal.
And then there was a third one.
Metal, scary ass industrial ceiling fan.
Yeah, it went at like 54 miles per hour or something.
Yeah, 54 miles per hour. The household is only 26, so that gives you an idea of how much more powerful that sucker was.
Right. I do really like, so they make the head. They use the same mold as they did from, I believe is the lightning stud.
Yeah, from the lightning meets tongue piercing. I do want to say really quick before we move on from the ceiling fans, we have seen them try to make a lot out of montages before. This is a new level of trying to take really boring footage and make something out of it. They literally go and buy ceiling fans. And there's like a 3-minute sequence of being like, but this ceiling fan does this. And this ceiling, and I was like, wow, they are really doing their best with a ceiling fan montage in this episode.
They kind of nailed it. For what it was.
They made it work. They made it work. But I was like, wow, of all the places we've seen them go, this is the most boring. And they kind of.
Not where I thought we would end up.
They got some TV out of it. But then they have to make the most, I would say, anatomically correct testing dummy we've seen so far, with not just, we've seen ballistics gel dummies and we've seen them put a skeleton in a dummy before, but this one had skin, it had arteries, it had skull, and it had a pig spine running through it. This was a pretty, like, again, coming a long way. They've come a long way just on their gruesome testing dummies.
This was gnarly. This is such a good example of how much shows like it's not Ultimate Warrior. Is that the Spike show?
Ninja Warrior?
No, it's the one where they like it would be like, could a knight beat a samurai?
Oh, yeah. I know the one you're
like
talking about.
Shows like, I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but like shows like that owe such a debt of gratitude to this show.
100%. Yeah.
And just, I mean, this is yet another example of like, this is years before those suckers were doing that. And, they were rightly landed on the fact that it is just so good to watch the rippling of the ballistics gel when it gets like smacked or sliced or whatever it is. Because even when it doesn't work in the first one, it's still just smacking him in super slow motion. It's hilarious.
Well, this is one of those.
Like it ripples.
This is one of those myths that high speed was made for.
Exactly.
Because in normal speed, this would not be nearly as satisfying. It would happen so quick. And like they show you a couple times the full speed and it's like, oh, that's violent, but it's not really that interesting. They actually, did you notice on a couple of these, they have to cut away from the high speed because I think it was actually too gruesome for them to show.
I did not.
When they're going into
I was wondering why.
Yeah, I think
because
it was too gruesome.
It
goes into the neck. And they had the fake artery with the fake blood, and I think they had to cut. I think they had to cut it because it was just too gory. Because it does. I mean, it looks like a human head. I mean, it looks. Yeah. It's even more because of the skin. It's even more realistic than usual. So I think they probably just couldn't show it because it was really gruesome.
So the house fan just smacks him in the face a bunch.
Yeah, a little bit of smackage.
Definitely would hurt, but like you're fine.
The neck breaks the fan, the household fan.
Yes. Yeah, eventually. Yeah. But then the industrial fan
does some damage.
It does get that artery. I think it kind of chipped the top of the skull.
And it nailed the artery in the neck. I mean, this is the one place where I was like, this is where the decapitation thing is a little bit weird because you could definitely die from that. If that hit your 100%. Artery, you would be dead. So I think, to me, that is a killer ceiling fan. Even though it didn't decapitate them, it is really, really dangerous. And that was a store-bought model.
They really want that decapitation, Cliff.
Oh, my goodness.
They really want it. Cliff, how are they going to get it? How are they going to get there?
Lawnmower engine, perhaps?
Oh, that's where we're starting?
We're going to start with the lawnmower engine and sharpened custom blades.
We're gonna make our own custom blades. Okay, great. Sure.
It is one of the most terrifying devices we've seen yet, and I feel like I say that all the time, and it just keeps being true.
Yeah, but this one goes so much faster than you would think. Like you see the size of the blades, and you're thinking like, well, lawnmower go pretty fast. How fast is it gonna go? And it's definitely not as fast, but that's
pretty brutally fast.
That sucker is whoa, 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 whoa. I don't want to be near it.
Did you notice there was a nice little Easter egg because Tori has to operate the fan from above the little room that they made? They made like a cool testing room we haven't seen before. It was honestly for television not great. It was kind of dark and weird, the way that they had to shoot it, but they needed a completely sealed room to do the test. And he's on the roof above it, on the top of the ceiling, and above him was Adam's hovercraft from the hovercraft episode.
No.
It was hanging up in the ceiling above him. That was a nice little Easter egg.
That is great.
You could
I'm sure that's just going to happen more and more.
You could also see at one point, this is actually jumping ahead a little bit, but it is purely in my memory from the show. You could see some like yellow cinder block behind them, like a yellow cinder block wall. That is the prison cell from Salsa Escape, which is a myth we have coming up in a couple of weeks. So we're starting to see some blending of the worlds.
No. Oh, Cliff has gone full MCU YouTuber.
I really have. I really have.
If you pause it here, you can see what that's actually going to end up being the Supremity cape. That, of course, Doctor Strange will wear. Not his first cape, however. This is going to be the second one.
I love that you're mocking
And that's
me.
how Jamie flies. I'm mocking you while saying stuff that is true.
You're mocking me while pulling from your own bed of knowledge.
Oh no! Oh no, I've outed myself!
Literally, the only thing you changed was your voice. You just did a voice.
And even that was not that different from like.
You're also mocking me as if oh yeah, you're like a guy who goes online and talks about this stuff on the podcast you co-host. It's your show too, dude.
Damn, I played myself.
Oh man. I mean, we know what we are. We're very honest about that.
I'm not, apparently. You're the nerd here, Cliff. Don't you forget it. I'm a cool guy. Cool guy. Oh, too good.
Leave a review and let us know.
4
On a
stars.
scale of 1 to 5 stars, how nerdy are we?
4.
Well, that's the way we get 5 every time. See?
I always
See?
want that 4. Yes. We convince them that it's a nerd scale.
See, pulling a little bit of a trick. Yeah. But the end result of this one was, I mean, not super in doubt. They say that it is busted across the board because there's no decapitations. I do say that the industrial fan could kill you. So I think killer ceiling fan, yes. Decapitating ceiling fan, no, not at all. Of course not.
But even I kind of disagreed with the last one because they were like, oh, it didn't decapitate him. It's like, well, right, because it like ripped the entire bust off of the stand.
Yeah.
It's not that, like, I think if it had been more firmly secured and you kept pushing it into I do think you would have gotten full decapitation.
Yeah.
I don't see that being a problem.
Entirely possible. Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't think about the way that they did the rig was not like body weight. It was much, much lighter, even though it had all that stuff. It was still much lighter than body weight would be. So that is interesting to think about what the difference might have been if they had, put like 150 pounds on it and held it in place.
Just saying.
But they also had a completely over-engineered death fan that I would hope nobody really owns.
Yeah, but I love the idea that they have an armory where they're like, here's where we keep all the stuff that is just cool from the show. There's where we keep the stuff from the show that might be illegal if the wrong person starts asking.
And it's right next to the room we saw Adam in with all the flammable boxes earlier in this very episode. So yeah, they're on watch list. They're definitely on watch list at this point in the show.
Yeah, probably good.
It's probably a smart idea to have them on some sort of list. Know where those guys are. But
in space.
That is our episode for this week. Definitely come back next week. Our episode is a classic. It is the myth of the brown note. The mythical frequency at which one poops their pants. It is a classic episode of Mythbusters. I've been so excited all season to get to that one, and I cannot wait to talk about it.
It's made for us.
Yes.
I mean, come on.
We made a fart joke in an episode that didn't have any. So imagine what we're going to do in Brown Note.
Not yet, it didn't.
Can you even imagine? Definitely.
You won't have to. You'll be crapping your pants. We'll see you then. No. Do a good outro. I'm sorry.
Definitely go find that episode wherever you watch the show. There's a lot of places online. While you're there, consider leaving us a rating and a review. It really helps us out. As always, we want to get the show to more folks, and the machines like when you when you give those ratings. So do us a favor if you like the show, leave a rating wherever it is that you listen. And come on back next week to hear us break that episode down. But until then, thanks for listening.
Bye-bye, babies.
Try This at Home is produced by Slugline Media. The show is written, hosted, edited, and shot onto the internet by Cliff Bumgardner and Harrison Stewart. Our music is by the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder. You can follow the show on Instagram @TryThisPod or email us trythisathomepod@gmail.com.